Well, welcome, Manuela, for and to, I should say, the Leaders Who Care series.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
I see you've got your background perfectly framed for what we're going to talk about. But before we get there, I would love you to briefly introduce yourself. And I always put an asterisk on this, especially for men who immediately go to what their title is in their job. Um, Before we get into all that, like where you're from originally and where you are now, however comfortable you are, but talking about your family and who they are and all that, and maybe even something you've never told anybody and you want the world to know about now, that's always fun too. But tell us a little bit about Manuela.
Sounds good. So, in my mind, my upbringing was totally normal. And then started realizing that it was actually quite unique from others. I had loving parents, mom and dad, and my younger sister. We were born in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. My mom is American, and my dad, who has since passed away, was Brazilian. And my mom was just a badass, if I can say that.
You can.
So she, all the places you would have wanted to be in the 60s and 70s to rabble rouse and improve the world, my mom was there. So, make that list. She was, marching on the mall with Martin Luther King. She was at Students for a Democratic Society in Chicago in 68 during the presidential convention. She was a freedom fighter, so registering Black voters in Tennessee. She worked backstage at Woodstock. You know,
Damn, she gets around.
she was there and she was fighting for the world she wanted. And just as a reference for how hardcore she is, she's 5 foot tall, a little Jewish lady from Newark, New Jersey, and she drove a yellow cab to make ends meet in Manhattan in the 70s.
Well, she's like
So,
she should have got together with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and formed a team.
yes, yes. Well, my mom's teams were feminists, definitely, and anthropologists, and that's what took her to Brazil. She did her PhD fieldwork as an anthropologist in Northeast Brazil with this is going to sound like a lot of gibberish, but it really is pretty straightforward. So she was studying a matrilineal Afro-Brazilian religious sect. So what does that mean? It was in Northeast Brazil, and actually this happened throughout Latin America. Slaves were brought over to Latin America. A lot of them were from West Africa. And what they did is they developed a kind of mixed religion, a syncretic religion between Yoruba traditions and Catholic traditions. So they basically had to kind of hide the Yoruba elements under the facade of Catholicism. And in this group in Northeast Brazil in Salvador, which was the largest slave trading port in Brazil at the time, there was one sect that became matrilineal, and that meant that the priestesses, only the priestesses, could communicate with the gods. And so my mom studied that as an anthropologist, and then came back to New York, where my dad, who was a Marxist economist, was doing his PhD. And so my mom's friends were all Brazilian at the time. She met my dad. My dad had been a communist agitator in Brazil. He, in high school, was organizing, and in college was organizing the communist student movement. Had to flee the Brazilian dictatorship. My grandmother told me a story where the police showed up at his house, and he was in hiding. And then after his undergraduate degree, in Niterói, which I call the Newark of Brazil. It's across the bay from Rio de Janeiro. He ended up going for his master's in Chile, in Santiago, which is where the UN had an economic master's program. And he ended up working under Allende on
Wow.
his economic team, and then fled when the coup happened. Has had amazing stories of crossing the border in the dark of night, pretending he was a professional tennis player because he didn't have his passport. Um, and eventually made his way to New York for his PhD. So dinner table conversations were
I
very
guess.
interesting. Talking about, the assumption basically to answer your question, the assumption was always like our job in the world is to work to make it better for others. And also because they were talking a lot about gender, race, and class, it instilled in me a more systemic worldview rather than saying, okay, there's a homeless person on the corner. That individual is at fault. It's possible that there was, of course, individual agency, but at the same time, let's understand what were the systems that led to that individual then ending up alone, homeless, or unhoused without a job on the street corner. And so that's how I grew up, and we moved to the States when I was 7. So I guess I'll to leave like a tidbit for you for your listeners about me. I was a confused kid. I was kind of a normal social kid. I liked to play sports. I liked to dance. I had a lot of good friends, and my mom did a lot of work to create normalcy in my and my sister's lives. So we would go and buy new clothes, when the school year came. So I never wanted for anything. We had food on the table, I had all the books in the world. At the same time, there was tension with my dad's values. He was a little bit more extreme. So, for example, like I had a bed and I had a desk and a bookshelf in my bedroom, but we didn't have furniture in the rest of the house. Like my dad would say to my mom, "You're raising bourgeois children." And so that was in the background, my mom trying to create a normal upbringing, my dad feeling very frustrated that he wasn't able to, I think, live out his values and manifest the world he wanted to see. And when he passed away, 15 years ago, he died of lung cancer, and his dying words were expressing regret at not having taken up arms for the communist cause.
Wow.
So he really took that to the grave. Um, at the same time, once he passed away, I felt released to become a business person, and I became an entrepreneur like the next month.
Wow.
And I've only recognized that connection in retrospect, but really it was a weight on my off my shoulder because for so long I had his expectations um really bore down on me, and he was who I looked up to growing up. He was really disciplined and hardworking. So my work ethic and my ambitions for the world to be better really are thanks to him. But I wanted to do it in a different way.
No, it's fascinating. Obviously, our parents influence us incredibly, the good, the bad, and the ugly, or whatever, the whole bit. And but you still love your parents for the most part, except for maybe extreme conditions of physical abuse or whatever. But and you go sometimes you go their way or you go the opposite of their way in things you do. You learn that, and we talk a lot about influencers, and we'll talk about it in a bit also. But um, you know as you were a kid and as a teenager, were these thoughts going in your mind all the time, or were you just kind of knowing it's there to some degree and then playing with your friends and doing this and doing that? And I mean, did you feel comfortable bringing friends home without having the furniture and stuff like that?
Yeah, I felt really in terms of like relationships and friendships that I built, I felt pretty at ease. I'm as we've talked about, I'm innately an introvert, like an extreme introvert. So I often just had a few very close friends. And they loved my family. I still have friends, people who I run into today who I was friends with in elementary, middle, high school who said like, "Oh, I remember your dad greeting us at the door with his, thick Brazilian accent, and like remember the smells of your house and how it smelled different." I was different, but I think the values of like being kind to people and welcoming, that also carried me forward a lot. But yeah, there was a lot of tension. Most of my friends, I'd say now in retrospect, I realize we're more socially and academically inclined. Like, I didn't bring home kind of like, I don't know if this is going to come off for like ditzes.
Right.
They've all gone on to do really great, important work
Yeah.
in their own lives. So I think my parents were intentional about cultivating that. My parents were very focused on us going to public school, which did create tension. We first moved to Providence, Rhode Island after Brazil, and the public school I went to was potentially going to undergo, this sounds so familiar, cuts to the arts programs and the science and math programs. And so we did visit private schools, and I visited one, an all-girls school, and I was so excited. I was so excited, and we couldn't afford it, and we didn't know about scholarships at the time. I remember in high school really wanting to go to boarding school because I felt I ended up going to high school in Evanston, which is just outside of Chicago. Great public school network, very diverse community. To this day, it's just an incredible, unique place. Actually, it's the first city in the United States to pass to legalize reparations. And now they are being sued by the Trump government. But the high school, it was an amazing academic environment and experience, but it was very difficult socially, and there was a lot of violence. Um, there was a lot of tension, class tension, racial tension. And it was a lot of stress for me. And I would always say, send me to boarding school, send me away. And my parents wouldn't do it. So I think I lived in conflict a lot. And I guess that made me really
Resilient.
maybe well suited, yeah, for entrepreneurship. Like, throw me in, I think the solution that we're building at Kadeya and the world that we live in, you and I were just talking about, is a world of contradictions. And I think people who can navigate those contradictions and live in the gray zones are going to hopefully do well, because I think we need people like that. And also the woman, I remember this quote, I'm not going to remember her name, but she was the first CTO for the White House under Obama. And she had this great interview where she said, look, this if I'm being criticized by both sides, left and right, it means I'm on to a great solution.
Absolutely.
And that's how I feel. And so I think people who really bring like an interdisciplinary worldview to solving big problems, I believe that's where the opportunities lie to move the economy forward.
Yeah, I agree. If both sides are saying you're wrong, then I think you're exactly in the right place all the time, because otherwise you're leaning too much to either side, and that and people will always tell you you can't do this, you can't do that because of this, because of that.
Yep.
But who are they to say that?
Yeah, well, then you're being held back by the past and the present.
Yeah. So a little segue it's kind of, and it's a whole educational process too. You're learning, and it's a matter of how you take that forward, what you learned from your parents and all the experiences you had, how you take it forward to be in your own, what I would call perceived reality, because there's a whole discussion about what's reality and what's illusion in this whole life of ours. Um, but education wise, you did have pretty unique education. I mean, you had Latin American studies, you had Chinese studies at Harvard and in Oxford. Then after that, you got your MIT and you got your MIT and MBA. You got your MBA at MIT. Too many letters. And even more. You studied in Chile and Taiwan too, I believe. What were you doing?
Yeah, that's correct.
What were you envisioning taking all that? And then even further after that, when you did your MBA, was that to specifically strengthen your business skills to move forward? So part A, part B, if you will.
Yeah, I've had for a long time and still have an internal conversation with myself of like, do you take the well-trod path or the path less taken? And I think in some cases, the well-trod path I would have really enjoyed. Like in an alternate universe, I would have ignored my dad's criticisms of wanting to work in finance. I would have graduated Harvard, gone to Goldman Sachs or whatever, and had a nice career as an investment banker and hopefully worked my way up. And like that would be my story. And that's not a bad story. I actually have a good friend that is her story. She's a
Sure.
managing director and she covers an entire region for Goldman Sachs. Straight out of college, 20 plus years. Um, I really I like discipline. I like structure. I like order. I was interested in going to the military. Like I would have done ROTC. Like I would have done this like very classic American kind of leadership path, that you hear about. My dad gave me the silent treatment when I got an internship offer at Goldman Sachs. I didn't take that.
That was
So
capitalism at its worst, huh?
yeah, he thought the stock market was Russian roulette. That's what he would call it. Um,
Not totally wrong.
yeah, there's lessons to be learned from that. So, there were paths that maybe were more natural for me and obvious, but
Well, how
for
did
very,
that lead though then to doing Latin American studies, doing Chinese studies versus, agriculture or what or something,
yeah.
you know?
Well, I think what happened is when the obvious path is shut to you for whatever reason, it forces you, it's like a river that's like kind of cutting a new path, right? If you put a dam or if you close off one curve, the water's going to find the next,
Yeah.
smoothest and easiest path of least resistance. And so for me, I started asking myself, okay, well, where am I going to be unique and what am I interested in? Like
Hmm.
fundamentally, like, what am I going to enjoy asking questions and digging into? And this was not by design. Okay. This was a lot of struggle and conflict internally. I beat myself up for a very long time about not doing the Goldman Sachs route. I got a job out of college. It was in advertising, which I didn't love, but it was an interesting opportunity that would pay the bills. And I was helping to launch a Brazilian beer brand. And what happened? I was there. You can already see my entrepreneurial initiative happening. This great ad agency was really up and coming. They didn't have an internship program. So I said, I'm going to build the internship program. And I got to know, the CEO, the head of HR that way. And I built a program that still exists. And then I started being brought into these strategy meetings. And this was 2005, 2006. And what was happening globally? China. People didn't care that I spoke Portuguese and Spanish. Our clients were the Wall Street Journal, Chase Bank. People wanted to know what's happening in China. So I somehow I don't remember this moment, but I convinced the agency to send me to China for 6 months. I mean, the ostensible reason was I was going to do beer market research because, right, my client was a beer brand and they paid. And I went to Shanghai and I got there. And again, being drawn to just interesting opportunities, I said, oh my God, like what is happening here? I go to bed with a building in front of where I'm staying. And the next morning, that building is razed, it's gone. And they're putting a new ground. Like, I don't know why. And yeah, I got a lot of
That's
feedback
China.
in those. Yeah, that was just really China back then too. And I don't know how I got it into my head, but when I was out there, I met a lot of journalists. I saw that Beijing was getting ready for the 2007 Olympics. And I said to myself, I have this idea. I want to become a journalist that's going to be acceptable to my dad. I can learn about new topics. And hey, I'm this Brazilian American. Like, I'm a good writer and a good researcher. Like, I should be a journalist in China. I mean, really, and I came back to New York and I took a bunch of journalism classes at night. I got an internship at the Council on Foreign Relations to beef up my kind of like international relations toolkit. And I just networked my butt off to meet every possible news network and publication. Here I was in New York City. Why not? Like, show
Yeah.
up at headquarters for Newsweek. And I got and applied for a bunch of grants and I got one. And it took me to Beijing in 2007, August 2007. It paid for room and board and health insurance, a little bit of salary. And I had, a Rolodex ready to go. And I landed, and 2 weeks later, got an interview at Newsweek's Beijing bureau with Melinda Liu. And I had a, 30-minute conversation with her. And she was like, I like you. You're a hard worker. I need someone with fresh perspectives.
Hmm.
And I got the gig. Like, I had dreamt this up. So to answer your question, like, yes, I meandered a lot. A lot of people in China would be like, why aren't you in Brazil? Like, because the story's here. And because I'm
But,
unique. I'm
but I
unique
think I
here.
think it seems like you were attracted, and this is what I love, um, to out of the box, or what, what is happening. I should the curiosity. I mean, you name it. All these things, and maybe even the whole internationalism thing. Of
For
just
sure.
different perspectives and what's happening out there. Because you were Beijing, you were Taipei as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
and stuff, and you were looking. Basically, it sounds like you were looking for stories. You were looking for stuff, and
Yeah. I was learning and I was, getting knocked down and getting back up again.
so
And
how
there's
how did you? I'm real
yeah,
good at I'm real good at interrupting, by the way. How did
I
you?
love it.
How do you think it shaped how do you think those experiences shaped your then deciding after that to co-found Insta Agro?
Yeah. Prior to co-founding InstaAgro, which it's still running in Brazil, and that was funded initially by the Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovation. I lived in China and started my first business called Smart Ag Analytics. And kind of jumping off of your last point that you were making, what I got good at was identifying patterns, gathering the data to validate that I wasn't making it up in my head, but that there really was like a trend line, and then making an argument that that was true and was going to become reality. And that's really what a journalist does all day. You're pitching these stories to editors, and they're like, show me the data, verify this is true, get me quotes, like, go do market research, right? Validate that there's like a there. So I got really good at that, and I got really good at taking feedback and improving my ideas and going back out again and just taking, I mean, a journalist is like a founder. You're just pitching all day and getting
I was going to
no's
say,
all
right?
day.
Yeah.
But I think the big picture is, and this is a quote from Cindy Gallup, who is really incredible, and now she's building a business. I don't have an opinion on this business. I'm not like recommending it one way or another, but it's called Make Love Not Porn. She's also often in like the bullseye of like criticism and doing the wrong thing. But she had a quote on an interview where she said she got advice from someone else saying, look, interesting opportunities come to people who do interesting things. And that's kind of the story in retrospect is I put myself out there.
Right.
So interesting ideas and opportunities and people came across my way. And that's kind of the summary, honestly, of how I navigated from, Brazil and advertising to journalism in China to entrepreneurship, focus on agriculture and supply chains, to then working at Palantir Technologies, right? To
Different
then
in different global
going,
markets also.
yeah,
Well, it's
identifying opportunities and patterns,
I compare
and
a
then
lot of things.
trusting myself.
Exactly. I compare a lot of things to sports, but I also compare them to just people. And if you're looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, sitting home and not talking to anybody is going to be pretty hard to find somebody. And
Absolutely.
as basic as that. And the more interesting stuff you put yourself out to, it's absolutely true. You'll find the more interesting stuff at the same time. You know,
Absolutely.
and you don't want to wait till you're 90 to say, man, I wish I would have this or I wish I would have that type of thing,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't work. That is what entrepreneurship is all about, is you're looking for that. Let me ask you, describe why, how and why you founded Kadeya. I mean, it's pretty unique. What's the meaning of it, type of thing.
Yeah.
What's the vision? What's the mission? Tell us a little bit about it.
Great. Yeah. Kadeya in Portuguese means chain. And so we say we are reimagining supply chains and starting a chain reaction for good. It was also the .com was available for $1,600, and we were able to get all the trademarks. So that worked out nicely for us. And Kadeya starts with a really basic question. This kind of goes back to what we were just discussing of
Mhm.
figuring out how to identify patterns and ask good questions and then trust the logic, which is why are we creating? Actually, I have a prop right here. I'm staying in a hotel here in New York, and I was given this upon entry.
Right.
Meanwhile, Manhattan has really good drinking water. Not perfect, but really good drinking water coming out of my sink right here. So I'm given this. And why are we creating this container? It's just a PET, looking to see if it's even recyclable. It's PET petrol, yeah, it's a plastic bottle, can be recycled. Well, I don't even know that this can be recycled. I don't even see the recycling code. This is shocking because it's so thin.
It
Anyway,
is.
why are we creating this container for every 16.9 ounce fluid ounce beverage that I need to consume? Right? I want what's inside. I don't care about the container. The container is totally incidental. It turns out the container evolved because we needed it to travel, to carry this around.
Hmm.
So I asked myself that question while I was working at Palantir and walking around New York City when City Bike launched, and said, wait a second, it's kind of analogous. I know this is going to sound crazy, but there's this jobs to be done framework from the Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen. So jobs to be done is what is actually needing to be solved. So bike sharing, right? Why does bike sharing work? It turns out people don't want the bike unless they're on the bike biking somewhere. Otherwise, it's just sitting there, locked up somewhere, useless,
Kind of like a car.
like a car, like a hotel room, like a lot of physical assets. And I extended that logic to the bottle and I said, wait, we actually don't want the bottle except for the time where you're holding it in your hand and putting it to your lips.
Hmm.
So we have this great tap infrastructure. Why can't we leverage the existing infrastructure and then just bottle the beverage where the consumer is when the consumer wants it? And then that unlocks an interesting opportunity, which is then you can have a reusable bottle that someone just drops off. So, like bike sharing, you're holding a bottle only as long as you want to enjoy what's inside. Again, the package is incidental. And so we came up with this idea of a reusable bottle. This is the Kadeya 16.9 ounce bottle. Literally, I can serve you the exact same thing
Hmm.
in here, infinitely reusable stainless steel. And we then have this nice little kiosk. And
That
the
was
first
very
thing,
good.
yeah, right here. Ta-da! It's right now the kiosk is 6 feet wide, 6 feet tall, 32 inches deep. 32 inches deep being critical because that means it can pass through any doorway. And so you people start saying, well, that's crazy. How are you going to dispense beverages? I'm like, well, we have soda machines. Those have been around for 70 years. We have filters. Those have been around for a long time too. So I know I can fill a bottle for you. And then the next question, well, how are you going to wash the bottle? I'm like, well, we've got dishwashers. By the way, dishwashers were invented by a woman out of Chicago.
Not surprising.
So, yeah. So, okay, we've got dishwashers. Those have been around for 100 some years. So we could put a dishwasher in the box. And then the next question, well, how are you going to get the bottles back? And I got that question while I was in business school at MIT, where I basically harassed everybody who would listen to me about my idea and got a lot of feedback. And so I said, that's an interesting question. How would we get the bottles back? And then I found by standing outside on different locations on campus, I gave out glass bottles filled with filtered water. And I tested different prompts, different, someone might say like business psychology prompts. I was testing different ideas. And I found over time that if I had written numbers, Sharpied numbers on the bottles sequentially, so 1 through 100, call it, and I'd say, oh, hey, Mark, you want a free bottle of filtered water? You say, yeah, that sounds great. I'd say, okay, great. Mark, can you just write your name, your email, or your phone number next to the bottle number that you're taking? You're going to take bottle 15. Cool. Here's 15. Just write your name. And when I did that, I got 99% of the bottles back consistently with no penalty or deposit. So then we took that and then I graduated and said, okay, I think we have a there with this business. And so we had sequential tests that I can talk about, but essentially we've taken those exact same ideas and just automated them in a micro bottling plant.
And so when someone walks up for the first time and they want a drink, They'll press the water, whichever drink, and it'll come out in the container you just showed me, right? And then they
Correct.
drink it. And then what happens?
Yeah. So when you first come up to the machine, actually, let me take a step back. So we've also, and I'd say probably the most important moment in the business was thanks to COVID. Because when COVID hit, I'd done all this research for white collar offices and like tech offices and university campuses. It's like, that's where we're going to go because that's what I knew. That's what I had access to. COVID hit. Thank goodness, because no one's going to those environments anymore. And so I had to hustle and think about environments where people would go no matter what. Pandemic, no pandemic, people are going to show up, right?
Right.
Because as we were talking about, it's a physical asset. I need it to be utilized. So I was struggling for a couple months. We left, my husband, son, and I left New York, moved back to Chicago. And my husband put me into a sailing class for a wedding, our what's it called? The annual reminder of your wedding.
Oh, your anniversary?
Anniversary. Thank you. Sorry, my
That's
English
all
is escaping me. So anniversary, he got me an anniversary present for a sailing lesson, which was something you could do in the middle of COVID. You go sailing. And so I get on my boat and I meet this woman, Esgy, who works at Gilbane Construction. And we start chatting and she gets excited about the idea. And she's like, yeah, I can't get you into an office building. She was doing biz dev for them. But I could get you on a construction site tomorrow. And I had never heard that. Yeah,
Right.
like light bulb moment. And so I went and did a bunch of research, another 200 conversations in industrial workplaces, and was like, okay, there's a there. And I called her up. I did Techstars Farm to Fork in Minneapolis, where I did all the discovery work. Demo day was October 6th, Friday. I called Esgy up that afternoon. I said, I'm ready. Let's do this. 3 weeks later, October 28th, 2022, I was I delivered our prototype to the Gilbane construction site at IU Health in downtown Indianapolis, the North America's largest construction project for healthcare.
Hmm.
And before I plugged in, this is just like a series of amazing things because before I plug in the machine, the project executive, Aaron Perry, who's become a huge supporter of ours, says, I want to buy that machine. How much do you sell it for? This is like, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, you're like, oh, like that's that moment I've been hoping for. Someone actually wants to buy. It's not even for sale, and they want this. And I said, why do you want to buy it? You don't even know if it works. And he said, what am I going to do when Kadeya leaves? Go back to buying and distributing pallets of bottles of water? That comment was golden because it helped me understand that the problem Kadeya solves for our customers is a logistics problem that comes with hydrating your workforce. These are men and women who work on their feet all day, high heat, extreme cold, and they're drinking out of these plastic bottles that melt in the sun, have to be moved around, and freeze in the snow.
And
And
terrible for
so
the environment and
terrible.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a logistic headache because they are literally just constantly trucking in pallets of bottles of water and then removing the waste and having a waste hauler come by to pick it up. And it's expensive, it's time consuming, it's a job nobody wants to be dealing with, but it is required by law, by OSHA. And it turns out people aren't even hydrating sufficiently. So we have this kind of band-aid solution. Like plastic bottles are a band-aid. They're a short-term solution until Kadeya came along to solve their problem, the real problem. And so I'd say like that moment, if we reflect back on my story, right, is being a journalist in China and listening to people say things that Melinda Liu, my bureau chief, thought were irrelevant, but to me was like neon flashing light. This is the opportunity. This is the problem. And so when Aaron Perry says that, I stop and I'm like, whoa, you've just illuminated the real problem. And it's an important moment, especially for the world you and I operate in, where people who are listening care about sustainability.
Right.
Sustainability is great and it's important. And for you as a founder, it can be what motivates you to get up every day. That's what motivates me every day. I want to eliminate single serve plastic and single serve beverage containers forever. By the time I die, they will not exist. No more aluminum cans, no more plastic bottles, no more boxed water.
The ocean will
Um,
thank you.
the ocean will thank me. Our bodies will thank me.
That
Our
too.
carbon footprint our carbon budget will thank me. Cost savings will be captured by everybody. So that's what motivates me. But what I struggled for the first 2.5 years of the business to identify, people would say, yeah, 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 okay, sustainability. What's the real problem you're solving? Like the real problem for your customer. Like when Kadeya gets plugged in, let's say the day before, what's their life? The
Hmm.
day after, what's their life? How are you going to be a 10x improvement in comparison? How are you going to deliver this experience where they say, that was really nice. Wow, I'm coming back. That was really cool. I want to do that again. I'm going to tell everyone about it. So that moment of understanding that human problem in the immediate that you're solving, not, oh, I'm going to reduce carbon footprint in 10 years.
Hmm.
That's not a human problem, unfortunately.
So I love that, and I love the thread of, and everything we talked about where it's led to, because it's all contributed to where you are now. Which it's sometimes people think, well, it wasn't the plan, but kind of like worked out like a plan in a way, and all the things you
Yeah.
learned before. Obviously, you have to take advantage of the opportunity that you do learn while you're doing all those things. So when now you get to the point, which I love, um, because you do find out where your audience is, your market is by listening to people like you're talking about. In fact, the whole world doesn't listen enough in general
Mm.
to each other. So now I walk up, we'll go back to the original, and now I walk
Yeah.
up to it, and
Yeah.
what happens? I haven't been there before. It's my first one.
Yeah.
Take it out, I drink it. What happens?
What we've done in factories and construction sites is we hand out QR codes, or your employer, like Ecolab,
Yeah.
emails out QR codes that you then have on your phone. Now, Air Force, we've won 2 SBIR grants. In that case, right, you have your Air Force badge and your Air Force biometrics. They will never share that with Kadeya. Great. Use that. But you do self-identify at the machine. So just like checking out a library book or undocking a city bike, right? You don't just get to walk up to any bike and pull it
Right.
out. You got to self-identify. So now we know you're a unique individual. You've created an account with us, or we just know your QR code. Okay, this is user ABC. User ABC now chooses what beverage he wants, and we've got flat water, sparkling water, and then 4 other flavored options. We can increase the number, but we found a total of 6 is pretty good for the audience that we're targeting. I want a Gatorade. I want
Hmm.
Diet Coke. I want Monster Energy. And then that beverage gets filled in front of your eyes in 7 seconds in the bottle. There's also a cap attached. The little door opens. You reach in, you grab your custom poured packaged beverage. You feel really good. It was really quick. It's cold. The water's delicious. You drink it, go on about your day. Remember now, we have that data because we now know user ABC got a bottle that has a QR code on the bottom. It's
Hmm.
etched in. So now we know user ABC got bottle 1234 at, it's November 4th at 11:44 a.m. at this location. And then when you're done, you come back to the machine. It could be any machine in the network. And so any Kadeya kiosk, you scan that QR code again on the bottom of the bottle. That opens a different door on the machine. You place the bottle in, and we do a quick overhead inspection. Just a little camera with shines a light in there to make sure that there's no debris inside that we don't want to deal with. Bubble gum, cigarette butts, plastic wrapper, grains
Yeah.
of rice. Also to make sure like the bottle isn't severely damaged, because what's going to happen next once we accept the bottle is a little robotic arm comes, takes your bottle. You can see it's flat on 2 sides, so it's a little pincer, grabs it and takes it and flips it inside. You go on about your day. You don't have to manage the bottle, carry it, wash it, refill it. You can get another beverage if you want. And then on the back, what the machine is doing is putting the bottle into a dishwasher. When the dishwasher is loaded, washes all the bottles. It's high heat, chemical like dishwash chemicals. And then with the high heat, actually the bottles dry very quickly. And then another little robotic arm comes and gets it and flips it And now it's waiting for the next person.
So everybody, so you don't keep the same bottle, you get different bottles and you keep track. It's
Exactly.
like a SKU number, if you will. Each bottle has their own thing. And
Hmm.
and so you might even drink it totally the first time and put it right back after that, type
Yeah.
of thing. And while you put it back, you get another drink in a different bottle and stuff like that. Um,
Yep.
no, it's brilliant in all the aspects you talked about, and I agree. All the places you talked about, I think are good potential customers, but in a construction site and industrial development places and stuff like that, why not? And just imagine all the plastic bottle crap that's all over the place. And what about for so now? What about for real quick? We don't go through all the marketing programs. Let's go back to that hotel for a minute that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would people then? Would you ever look at Hilton has their name on all the bottles or something like
Yeah.
that?
Absolutely. So we talked about these kind of closed industrial environments. We have some next environments that we're excited about. So we have a pilot lined up at a hospital. We have a pilot lined up at a university campus. And we're actually really interested, although this is a declining market, but movie theaters would be really interesting, as well as like the VIP lounges at airports. So the way I think about it from the nucleus of a circle going outward, we've started in this, we call it the atomic network. What's the smallest possible network that we can deliver immediate value when we only have a few stations because we're a startup? And then basically, as you go outward, each additional outer ring, the environment is slightly more open and allows more movement of new people to come in.
Hmm.
So I've mapped this out, and it's really exciting to think about. We think of closed environments first. We think of then these semi-open but predictable environments. So maybe gyms would be good, hotels could be good. And then the third outer ring, when we have enough density from the first two rings, we could add some more stations, but then it would be really more open and maybe would be managed by a city. So it would be like a utility. That's one hypothesis of how it would
Sure.
go. We're learning, right, as we're going. Now, because every bottle because we have this data record of who you are and what you're consuming, what we think about, we have 99% bottle return rate with no penalty or deposit. That's our baseline. That said, as we go to incrementally open environments, we've built the software out where we can play in the world of either penalties or rewards. We want to stay in the world of rewards and incentives because penalty is where sustainability has historically sat. Sustainability is like extra work, extra cost, lower quality. We want to be in the world of rewards, like congrats, you did the right thing. And
Hmm.
so because we're going to have the historical data on a network basis, a per station basis, and a per consumer basis, we're actually going to be able to send out dynamic incentives to satisfy the system's needs. So, for example, we're going to know historically, user 123, let's say that's you come every day at 10 a.m. to get your Diet Coke. But we also see that your next beverage at 1 p.m., let's call it an energy drink, you're going to all types of stations in the network. You're moving around a lot. So we might say, look, we know that he comes to station A and sometimes he goes to B and C and D. Station D at 1 p.m. is historically running low on bottles. Let's incentivize you, user ABC, to return your bottle to station D. You seem really flexible. Your elasticity
Hmm.
is adaptable. Let's say, hey, come get 50% off your energy drink that we know you love.
No, I think you're on the
Yeah.
right track there. Is my interruption again? You're on the right track there, and there's a lot of incentivization and branding opportunities that I think you could play with too. And in fact, I know someone I'll want to introduce you to. But one thing I got to do is tell you, like in LA,
Yeah.
we say keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel. That's what we do in LA supposedly.
Yeah.
So it's great stuff. I have one more question I want to ask you here though.
Great.
And it's super exciting what you're doing. Little completion type of question. In 2021, one of my clients told me about 2020, the pandemic year, which was in some ways an instrumental year for you. Um, he said, that was the year that flew by slowly. And I
Yeah.
thought what an interesting line. And today people look at COVID like it was almost yesterday and years ago, all at the same time. It's
Yeah.
crazy in a way. And but with everything that's gone on and a lot of that you've described, and we're already at the end of 2025 pretty well already.
Mm.
What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
I'm so grateful for the people who surround me in my immediate life. So, my husband, who's incredibly supportive and patient of the crazy thing I'm trying to do, and late nights, early mornings, trips around the country. Um, just that encouragement rather than having the extra drag at home for
Good.
like tough days, it just makes such a difference. And my mom and sister who check in and give me positive encouragement. My son who's, curious and willing to say, yeah, it's okay, you can travel. And then my colleagues who like it's not been an up and to the right journey. There's I like to say two steps forward, one step back. And they believe they show up every day and they're doing the tough work. I'm just grateful for all of them. And I think that's a good lesson. Like you can have these global ambitions, but it starts with who you talk to every day.
Yeah.
And if you can't convince the people right around you, and if they're not on board, how are you going to convince the rest of the world? You
Well,
know?
global starts with local, however the
Yeah.
expression is. And what are you most hopeful for?
Really hopeful and excited. Kadeya closed our price round recently last week.
Yeah.
Got the cash in the bank. We are launching a crowdfunding, and that will allow us to put stations out into the world by the end of Q1. So this thing that I've been dreaming about, really almost 10 years, going to be real. I mean, it's already real in the lab. We have 27 stations pre-ordered with the US Air Force, with Gilbane and Turner Construction, with Ecolab, Georgia Pacific, Ingredient. These are real companies who've signed up, put down payments to get these machines, calling us up saying, like, when do we get our machine? And they're gonna be going out into the world. So I am so hopeful for that moment and the beginning of the end of single serve beverages.
And now all you need is your face on each machine saying, "Welcome."
Yeah,
What can I
that'll
do for
that'll
you?
be when I know we're making it, when I can record that video.
Well, congratulations. I think it's spectacular. You've created a chain effect, I guess you would call it, in that. And we're looking to hear all the new news coming out. So and thanks for being a leader who cares and for being on the series.
Absolutely. There's no better way. There's no other way than being a leader. Who cares?
I'm with you on that for sure.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Thank you.